Nigel through to Graham Hancock. Hi.
Hello, James. Hello, Mr. Hancock.
Hi.
I'm disdainful of all this New Age nonsense myself, but the two particular points I'd like to put to you...
Pause a moment, though. What do you mean by New Age nonsense?
The sort of stuff that much of what you've been saying in the last half hour.
I mean, for example, what?
This business about altering human consciousness and so on. I see no evidence for that at all. I see no grounds for it. But what I'd particularly like to put to you is that your assertions about a comet interfering with human history in the historical period are actually derived, aren't they, from books published by Immanuel Velikovsky in the early 50s, Ages in Chaos.
Velikovsky did great work on cosmic cataclysms in the 50s, but the real source of this work are men like Victor Klube at Oxford University, Bill Napier at the Royal Armagh University, Sir Fred Hoyle of Cambridge, Professor Chandra Wickram Singh, Professor of Astrophysics at Cardiff. These are the men now who are doing the great work on comets and cometary collisions with Earth. And quite frankly, what I've tried to do in my book is to popularize that work and put it before the public in a palatable form.
Yes, it's obviously a popularization.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what it intended to be.
Isn't it the case?
Actually, I'm interested. Tell me, Nigel, what is wrong with popularization of everything? Otherwise, we don't all bloody understand it.
The trouble with popularization is that people tend to start talking nonsense, for instance, about ancient Egyptian history, as Mr. Hancock has.
What do you know about ancient Egyptian history?
Well, I know, actually, I'm an undergraduate reading history at Oxford.
But about ancient, you're reading ancient Egyptian history?
No, I'm reading modern history. But
what do you know about ancient Egyptian history?
I'm just about to tell you if you stopped interrupting me. I know, for instance, that the pyramids didn't appear fully formed, but they revolve. There's the step pyramid at Saqqara, for instance.
There's 150 years of traceable archaeological evolution before the greatest stone monument that mankind has ever built. Do you think that's enough?
I think that the practice, that the art or the practice of building pyramids will actually evolve, that the ancient Egyptians did it themselves. That's observable.
I think the ancient Egyptians did it themselves too, but I'm still puzzled how they managed to build a monument of such perfection. It's aligned to true north better than the Meridian building of the Greenwich Observatory in London. How they managed to do that, it's just 150 years of experience.
They learned to do this themselves, and the means by which
How did they learn to do it?
Well, by the use of their intelligence and engineering skills, of course.
That's no answer. That's just an oversimplification and generalization. Thank you, Nigel. We'll take many more calls from you. If you'd like to talk to Graham, we'll be back right after the news in a couple of moments. Don't go away. Free call 0500 1050 389. Graham, do you think we were living in an interesting time?
Yeah, I do. I think we're living in a wonderful time. It's a time. I personally take a lot of my own philosophy from ancient texts. I've spent, unlike an earlier caller who's studying modern history, I've spent much of the last 10 years in an intense study of ancient Egypt, to the extent that I've been able to do so, and trying to read the ancient Egyptian writings in translation, the pyramid texts, and what all of these texts tell us, and later texts as well, is that mankind is a kind of fulcrum of a cosmic struggle between good and evil, and that what makes us different from other species is that we have the power to choose. We have the power to make a choice. There's the ghastly abomination of people who kidnap and torture and murder children in our society, which is increasing today. And these people, each and every one of these people, they make a choice for evil. They make a choice to inflict misery and pain on the child that they kidnap and on the family of that child. They make a choice. And they may believe that they're going to get away with it one way or another. Whether they get caught or not seems to be the only issue that concerns them. But if you follow what the ancients taught, they tell us that we all will pay a price for our actions, so that we'll all be accountable for what we do in our life.
Does that make you religious?
And that actually it's better to be to pay your dues in this life than in the next one. And I believe that what's dawning is a realization that we are confronted by a power of choice. We are confronted by the choice of making a good world or a bad world. And I believe that the realization that we can choose, the fact that we live in a time of an awakening of understanding that we can make these choices and that it rests on our shoulders is a great time to live.
You believe in good and evil, then? I mean,
yes, I do.
My problem I have with that is that I think a lot of these people are mentally sick and that they are not actually responsible for what they do, that they are for some reason without any kind of conscience.
No, I believe they are absolutely responsible, particularly those who calculatedly plan a kidnap and torture and murder. This is an act of choice, which somebody has.
That's not the act of a sane person, though, is it?
I don't really think it matters whether the person is sane or not. I believe that the person is responsible for their actions, and I think that our society today has unfortunately made a large choice in the direction of violence and cruelty. We've created an ethic where we believe that everything is to be evaluated in material terms entirely. So if somebody has more of something, then they're somehow better, and if somebody has less of something, they're somehow worse. And because everything's weighed in material terms, because we don't think of the spiritual side of life and the spiritual side of our actions, it is possible for people actually to use a fellow human being as though they are just an object which has no meaning to them at all.
Sounds like you're talking to the Inland Revenue to me. Now, let's go back to the calls. Put your headphones on. Is that the stigmatist chewing gum there? Right. Or maybe
I'm just keeping this tissue on top of
maybe I'm doing him a great disservice. Maybe somebody else stuck chewing gum on my desk. John in Essex, you're on Talk Radio. Hello.
Hi, James.
Yes, John. You're through to Graham.
Yeah, congratulations on your award, by the way.
Thank you very much.
You deserved it. Yeah. But don't lose the edge, you know?
No. Well, I'll try not to.
Right, now my question was, the Mayan people, in their ancient text, actually said that the secrets to the universe would be revealed to us, and that the answer was in between the paws of the Sphinx in Egypt. Did you know anything about that?
I'm not aware of any Mayan text which speaks of the Sphinx in Egypt, or of any Mayan text which says such a thing. But what I am aware of is the extraordinary Mayan calendar, which is a work of amazing scientific sophistication, which calculates the length of the solar year better than we do today in our calendar, and which does say that the Earth will be afflicted by a gigantic cataclysm in the very near future. When you convert the Mayan calendar into our calendar, they say that on the 23rd of December 2012 AD, all life will be brought to an end on Earth by a huge disaster.
Yeah, but then, like, as you said, it's up to us, though, isn't it? We have the choice. And the thing is...
This is the very strange and eerie thing that seems to be hinted at in all the ancient texts, that somehow we bring this disaster on ourselves.
Yeah, but the thing is, all religions and beliefs are all fatalistic. There is always an end. Why can't it just go on?
Oddly, the ancient Egyptians weren't fatalistic like that. They felt that a great deal was in our own hands, and depicted it that way.
Why did the Egyptian civilization, Graham, suddenly sort of just fizzle out?
It didn't suddenly fizzle out. It lasted in recorded history for 3,000 years. It was an enormously stable society, and many of modern historians look on this as somehow a failure on the part of the ancient Egyptians, that they kept things the way they were and didn't change
moving forward,
and didn't appear to move forward. But you see, the way the ancient Egyptians saw it was they had created the perfect environment to nurture the human spirit, and since it was perfect, they saw no reason to change it. They felt that it worked very well, and travelers like Herodotus, who came to Egypt, testified to this. They say that the Egyptians were the happiest, the most serene, the most generous and decent people that they had ever encountered.
Another problem we've got is that the mankind is incredibly arrogant. You had that chap phone up earlier who's doing a degree in modern history or whatever. I have no degrees at all. I have qualifications, don't have a degree, but I've read modern history, and I'm reading ancient civilization work. And there you have it.
Yeah, I think
weakness is his arrogance.
Absolutely, I absolutely agree with you. And our great hope is that more and more people today are refusing to be dictated to by so-called academic experts, and are making up their own minds.
John, thank you very much indeed.
This is Talk Radio. I can't use my 8.5 inch or my 15 inch.
Do you think, Graham, we're trying to get back to the sort of peace of mind of Egyptian time that we've all raced and Or we have to go this path, don't we? We have to do what we're doing.
We're confronted by a choice as to what to make of our world and of our society. And more people today are realizing that in order to make an informed choice, we need to listen to the testimony of the ancients and not just to the testimony of modern scientists. We have to listen to what our ancestors have to say. And if we do listen to what they have to say and inform ourselves with that, then I do think the chances of making a better world are rather high.
Okay, Graham Hancock is with me. His new book, The Mars Mystery, A Tale of the End of Two Worlds, has just come out. It's all about what happened to the possibility of a civilization that used to exist on Mars that seemed to suddenly disappear, and how does that relate to the fact that this planet may well have had other civilizations that also disappeared, and are we in line, if we're not very careful, to bear the brunt of another attack is the wrong word. Onslaught is a better word from meteorite, not the bigger the meteorites, aren't they?
The best bet is a giant comet fragmented into many parts.
Okay, let's talk to Jonathan, who's on his car phone somewhere in Birmingham. Jonathan, you're on the air, and through to Graham.
Good morning. I was in a film that's just been launched called Deep Impact, and I don't play a very big role in it, but
any role's better than none, you know.
Well, quite. There's a theme to the film, just about, and this huge meteorite's going to hit Earth, and they come up with a plan to annihilate it and blow it away. My question is...
Hey, Jonathan, just before you ask the question, who starred in the movie?
Who starred in the movie?
Yeah.
I haven't a clue, I'm an extra.
All right, okay, I just wondered. Okay, go on.
Okay, so anyway, the question is, if we inherited, or if the Egyptians have inherited this knowledge to build pyramids, do all these sort of things, and the previous guys got zapped, it doesn't seem like they had a good plan for blowing away comets that are coming. So my real question here is, are we going to be cleverer in this form than the previous inhabitants?
I think that the previous civilization was taken by surprise by this disaster that brought the last ice age to an end. And I think that the survivors of the civilization did everything in their power to understand what had happened to them and to pass this knowledge down to the future. And I do think that there are intriguing references to what happened to the Earth in the ancient texts. And oddly enough, and it was one of the things that got me into this subject, there are intriguing references to the planet Mars in Egyptian tradition and in Mexican tradition as well.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. Let's talk to Helen in Herefordshire. Helen, you're on Talk Radio and through to Graham Hancock.
Good morning.
Hi.
I just wanted to ask you whether you knew anything about the pictures that the Russians had from Mars about 10 years ago. I saw them on a television news program, and they said that they looked like aerial pictures of Los Angeles, that it was sort of a huge city. Some of the buildings perhaps about a mile wide. There was, I think, even something that looked like a ruined suspension bridge, and the Russians said that there was going to be more news within the next month. And then we heard nothing more about it.
That's right. There were some very strange rumors, certainly, about photographs from Russian craft. Although the Russians have not had, at least officially, any very successful photographic missions to Mars. But some photographs, 20 or 30 frames, were sent back and did appear to show intriguing objects, and also the shadow of an object being cast on Mars from space, which some people have interpreted as a spacecraft. But I'm afraid the evidence that we have on what the Russians got in those photographs is so rumor-laden and so thin on the ground that we can't say anything for sure about it.
Haven't they released them now or not?
No.
No, they won't? Have they definitely got these photographs?
No, they don't definitely have these photographs. Right. It could be a rumor.
Did you see the photographs?
No, I haven't seen the photographs, and I don't know anybody who has.
I saw them. I actually videoed the news reports at the time, but I've lost the video now. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, it was really incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, there were genuine pictures supposedly at the time.
And then it's been hushed up subsequently.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me. I think that the whole attitude of the scientific world to this problem on Mars has been extremely peculiar from the very beginning, and it's why I can't help feeling that there may be something more going on there than we realize.
Helen, thank you for your call. Graham, do you think there are civilizations on probably all our near planets, or have been at some time?
I don't know, is the answer to that question. I think that the numbers, the statistics of the enormous quantity of stars that there are in the known universe, and the growing evidence that there are planets circling many of these stars, makes it very likely that there is intelligent life out there. We know that there's life in the universe because we're alive. The only question is, are we an absolutely unique and unrepeatable event, or are we something that is a general process within the universe? I tend to favor the latter view. I suspect that life is the essence of the universe. I think that's what the universe is for. I think it's a theater for life to experience itself in.
What is we have a trip going to, is it one of the moons of Jupiter or one of the moons of Saturn? I can't remember at the moment.
Yes, moons of Jupiter and moons of other outer planets as well are all being surveyed at the moment, and there are interesting signs, particularly of water, and suggestions that there may be beneath a frozen crust on some of the moons, that there may be life in that water.
What we need to do, of course, and what part of your book is about it, is we need to try and get the authorities and people interested in keeping an eye out for asteroids that are...
Two things need to be done. I mean, first of all, we have the Hubble Space Telescope at the moment, which is sending back enormously interesting pictures from deep space. We need another space telescope that's up there, which is also photographing in the infrared, because some of these objects come at us from the direction of the sun and are absolutely invisible to normal telescopes.
Is it likely...
We need one which is dedicated to surveying Earth-crossing and potentially Earth-hitting objects.
Is it likely at this particular moment in time there is a huge foreign body winging its way towards us that we are not even aware of, and that our scientists are not aware of?
Yes, I think it's extremely likely that there is such an object. I'm persuaded by the calculations of the scientists, some of whose names I've already mentioned, which indicate the breakup of a huge comet in the solar system about 20,000 years ago, and that bits of which are still there. The calculations indicate they connect it to what is called the Taurid meteor stream, which we see meteors from twice a year, and that these meteors, which are just like sort of cosmic sparklers, are just the outer fringes of a huge cloud of debris which is whistling through the solar system and which crosses the path of the Earth.
But we have been hit. I mean, we've been hit. Apparently in Siberia there was an
enormous explosion in Siberia in 1908. It's called the Tunguska event, and this was caused, calculations suggest, by a tiny object which was just 70 meters, what's that, about the size of a city block in diameter.
And that
200 feet. Now that exploded in the air about 6 kilometers above the ground. And the consequence of that explosion was that 2,000 square kilometers of forest in Siberia was completely devastated and flattened. 400 kilometers distant from the epicenter, they were feeling huge earthquakes in the ground as a result of it. I mean, this was a major. People's clothes were set on fire hundreds of kilometers away by the fierceness of the explosion in the atmosphere that resulted from this. And this was just a tiny thing. And actually, it's very interesting that occurred in June of 1908, because June is one of the 2 times in the year when the Earth passes through the Taurid meteor stream. And the majority of scientists who are studying these matters think that Tunguska object, as it's called, was a fragment of this same giant comet that also ended the last...
Oh, that's wonderful. So we're just about to get in there now for the next
They believe that we're in a bombardment episode 9. See, the interesting thing is that I touched on this a little bit earlier, is that we tend not to realize how much our lives on Earth are governed by the galaxy. most people don't even think about this, but although just as we're in orbit around the sun, the sun is in orbit around the center of the galaxy. And this orbit takes 250 million years to complete. And as the sun goes round the center of the galaxy in this orbit, it doesn't just move in a flat plane, but it behaves rather like a porpoise, going up and down through what's called the galactic plane. And when it's above or below the galactic plane, it's in a relatively quiet area of space. But when it's passing through the middle of the galactic plane, it's in a very lumpy area of space, filled with things called gigantic molecular clouds and spiral arms. And when the solar system, because the sun tows the whole solar system along with it, passes through the galactic plane, this causes gravitational disturbance to the solar system. Now, it's known that the solar system is surrounded by an enormous cloud of comets. These clouds are called the Oort cloud, after the astronomer who first identified it. And it's estimated that there's 100,000 million comets sitting in the Oort cloud, some of which are giant comets, hundreds of kilometers in diameter. As the Earth passes through the galactic plane, the gravitational influence of the galactic plane throws some of these comets into the inner solar system, and they gradually migrate down into the inner solar system. It takes 5 or 6 million years for them to reach our part of space. And the evidence suggests that we passed through the galactic plane just about 5 or 6 million years ago, and that we can expect to be in a bombardment episode now as a result of this.
This year?
Right now, this time. Our epoch, our generation.
Okay, we're actually been quite lucky so far over the last, they've missed us, but June is a bad time.
June is a bad time, and so is November.
Book your holidays. Andrew in Kent, you're on Talk Radio through to Graham Hancock. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm very glad to get through, but you have to apologise me for my slight nervousness, because I'm not used to being like on Talk Radio talking to millions of people or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But,
you're telling me you're an extraterrestrial next?
Well, how did you know?
Just intuition, I guess.
Yeah, but I agree with a hell of a lot of what Nigel Hancock is saying.
Graham Hancock, thank you.
Because at the end of the day, there's only a few people like him that is actually saying things that only maybe less than 1% of the population on this planet Earth is willing to stand up and say. And as far as what I'm concerned, I strongly believe that we are, especially as we are approaching the millennium, and especially since it's the alignment of the planets and different things like that, that we will be coming into contact with extraterrestrials. And these extraterrestrials, as Graham Hancock has been saying, have been with us since before I recorded history. And my personal opinion is, and not just my personal opinion is, but a lot of people of my persuasion, we believe that we are just the physical manifestation of higher beings, and that we, as when it says in the holy books, not whether it's the Bible or whether it's the Vedas or whether it's any other holy book, it doesn't really make much difference. Whether you're a Red Indian, whether you're an Aborigine, or whether you're an Eskimo, it makes no difference. That we are just in physical manifestations of their love, their hates, their jealousies. And as regards to floods and things like that, what you were talking about earlier, I mean, I'm no Christian, don't get me wrong. I mean, I don't have no disrespect as regards Christians, but it talks about a time when, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 6 and 7...
There were giants in the earth in those days.
Could you say that again?
There were giants in the earth in those days.
That's right, the Nephilim.
Yeah.
I spoke about the Nephilim, because they were, it's in Genesis chapter 6, it speaks about the time in Genesis chapter 6. And I'm only a reasonable expert. I'm no great expert, but I'm only a reasonable expert in just say one holy book.
Which is?
The holy, what some people would call the Holy Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Right.
But it speaks about a time when even in verses 1, 2 and 3, when even the sons of the true God came down. And
when do you think, Andrew, this is likely to happen?
Well, according to not just what's written down in the holy books, but according to many other people. I mean, I don't know if you saw that television program the other day. I mean, I don't take much notice of these programs because they're just old, not old hat, but they're...
Yeah, so
they come along.
The question I asked, though, is when do you think this is going to happen?
Well, I think it's going to happen according to one book anyway. I can only tell you as regards one book, and I am no Christian. But within the generation that saw the First World War, will still be alive when this will happen.
Well, they've missed it then. Right, thanks very much, Frank. Nice talking to you. We'll take a break. Back after this.
If you want your horoscope and your birthday form...
It's a tremendous adventure when...
What did he say?
It's a tremendous adventure when we die.
All right, okay. Well, we'll all look forward to it. Bob in Hastings, you're on the air and through to Graham Hancock. Hello.
Hello, James. Hello, Graham. This is Bob in Hastings. I'm originally from Oxford. I saw the original photographs of Mars.
There's nothing to be ashamed of that you are in Hastings now, Bob.
That's it. By the sea, James.
You're very nice, Bob. We can't all live in Oxford.
I lived in the Cowley Road, James, for quite a while.
There's no answer to that.
I've been researching UFOs. I've investigated Mars.
Have you? How did you get there?
6 years old. I happen to believe the pyramids were probably built by the ancient giants, which you've just referred to, haven't you?
I quoted from Genesis 6, but I don't believe that. I think the evidence is compelling and overwhelming that the pyramids were built by the ancient Egyptians. What interests me is what the ancient Egyptians themselves say about their own history and about the source of their knowledge. I think we're on a hiding to nothing to try to attribute the pyramids of Egypt to extraterrestrials.
Thank you, Bob. The pyramids actually weren't built as burial chambers, were they, nowadays?
I don't believe they were. It's a common assumption that the three great pyramids of Egypt were built as the tombs of three pharaohs, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure in the 4th dynasty, but there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever for this assumption. Later pyramids definitely were used as tombs, and they contain acres of inscriptions inside them, which tells us precisely what they were. But these pyramids contain no inscriptions whatsoever, and there's no evidence that they were built as tombs. No body, no mummy was ever found inside them, no grave treasures were ever found inside them, and they have enormously complex internal systems and passageways. I have my own view on what they...
What do you think, therefore?
What they were. Well, we know that the ancient Egyptians were enormously interested in the afterlife, and they were interested in what happened to them after death.
Actually evolved, that the ancient Egyptians did it themselves. That's observable.
I think the ancient Egyptians did it themselves too, but I'm still puzzled how they managed to build a monument of such perfection. It's aligned to true north better than the Meridian building of the Greenwich Observatory in London. How they managed to do that is just 150 years of experience.
They learned to do this themselves, and the means by which
How did they learn to do it?
Well, by the use of their intelligence and engineering skills, of course.
That's no answer. That's just an oversimplification and generalization. Thank you, Nigel. We'll take many more calls from you if you'd like to talk. Nigel through to Graham Hancock. Hi.
Hello, James. Hello, Mr. Hancock.
Hi.
I'm disdainful of all this New Age nonsense myself, but the two particular points I'd like to put to you.
Pause a moment, though. What do you mean by New Age nonsense?
The sort of stuff that much of what you've been saying in the last half hour.
I mean, for example, what?
This business about altering human consciousness and so on. I see no evidence for that. Actually, I'm an undergraduate reading history at Oxford.
But about ancient, are you reading ancient Egyptian history?
No, I'm reading modern history. But
what do you know about ancient Egyptian history?
I'm just about to tell you if you stopped interrupting me. I know, for instance, that the pyramids didn't appear fully formed, but they revolve. There's the step pyramid at Saqqara, for instance.
There's 150 years of traceable archaeological evolution before the greatest stone monument that mankind has ever built. Do you think that's enough?
I think that the practice, that the art or the practice of building pyramids, I see no grounds for it. But what I'd particularly like to put to you is that your assertions about a comet interfering with human history in the historical period are actually derived, aren't they, from books published by Immanuel Velikovsky in the early 50s, Ages in Chaos.
Velikovsky did great work on cosmic cataclysms in the 50s, but the real source of this work are men like Victor Klube at Oxford University, Bill Napier at the Royal Armagh University, Sir Fred Hoyle of Cambridge, Professor Chandra Wickram Singh, Professor of Astrophysics at Cardiff. These are the men now who are doing the great work on comets and cometary collisions with Earth. And quite frankly, what I've tried to do in my book is to popularize that work and put it before the public in a palatable form.
Yes, it's obviously a popularization.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what it intended to be.
Isn't it the case?
Actually, I'm interested. Tell me, Nigel, what is wrong with popularization of everything? Otherwise, we don't all bloody understand it.
The trouble with popularization is that people tend to start talking nonsense, for instance, about ancient Egyptian history, as Mr. Hancock has.
What do you know about ancient Egyptian history?
Well, I